So today I'm going to show you guys how I painted my ghosties, my Nighthaunt. I figured it was around Halloween time and you guys would be interested. So here is a couple of the colors I used. And this is actually what I started off with. So this is step 1. I am not sure how to pronounce that. Aethermatic blue. It's a contrast paint, so it does have a bit of a different wet texture, and it does take a little bit longer to dry. So first, I'm going to take that, without breaking my miniature, I'm going to take that contrast paint, and I'm just going to go along all of the ghostly body parts. Kind of just spread it around evenly, I guess. Don't let too much of it sit. And once you kind of go over that, like once or twice, you can't really touch it after it starts to dry, or you get some pretty weird things happening. It'll like peel the paint back off. So this contrast paint is a little different than what I'm used to, but you do get used to it after a while. After I started using it for quite a bit of my army, I just kind of got the gist of it. It's almost kind of like a wash, but it's still a little bit different texture-wise. I feel like a wash is still a little bit thinner. And this stuff just pools everywhere, not just in like the lower areas, like a wash would. You can see it's actually pooling on the top there, even though it's not inverted or indented at all. And that's kind of how you got the variations of the different colors. And that's going to show up later when we add greens and yellows and things like that to make it really bright. But yeah, I'm just going to coat basically the whole ghosty part. I'm not really too worried about the chains and things like that. Like if you get paint on that, it's really not that big of a deal because I'm going to go over that with black at some point anyways, probably in another part of this video. So just going to kind of go over that. All right, so one of the things you kind of got to watch out for with this is that pooling right in here. Yeah, you really don't want that. I mean, if you miss a spot and you have to go back to it later on after it's dry because you didn't realize it was there, you could just take like a sewing needle and just kind of poke it through. But you can see it's actually pretty thick and it's hard to get the liquid out of there. So try not to have that pool too much like I did. Just wipe some of that off my brush. There we go. Now I feel like we're getting somewhere with that. So it's definitely a learning curve working with this paint, but it is, after all, just the base paint, so it's not too big of a deal. And I'm just going to stop kind of where this outerwear connects here, just because I'm going to do his cloak a different color. And I'm just going to pretty much do the same thing underneath as I did with the top. And just try to get in there the best I can. Bear with me for a moment. Hopefully you guys can see this. It's very hard to see in there. And honestly, I will put a little bit of black in there if I'm not happy with the result. Just for shadowing. But it really depends. Let's see, what did I do for this guy? Does he have a little bit of black underneath? No, actually, I don't think I painted the inside of him too much at all because I actually couldn't get in there. So I guess it's one of those things where, you know, out of sight, out of mind. So I wouldn't stress too much about that. I'm going to do his arms and stuff too because, you know, ghostly arms coming out of the cloak. It's just going to be part of the ghostly part. And it is not a big deal if you miss a spot here or there, because you can also cover it up with green and you're just going to get a different variation of that green color. Like the green's going to be a lot darker in the darker areas and it's going to be a lot lighter in the lighter areas. So I'll just give it a good double check. I think some of this stuff is ghostly down here. I don't know, it's hard for me to see what this actually is until I put a coat of paint on it, and then I'm like, oh, so that's a tombstone. I had no idea before I started painting it. It's all the same color, so either white or black, or sometimes gray is all I really prime my stuff in. So it's all one color, it's a little harder to see. So I'm going to let that dry, and then I'll show you guys how to do the green layers. So now that this is dry, I'm going to go over it with my green. And this is the Gamma Green, which is actually awesome because it glows in black light. But in order to use that paint, I don't want it to be completely opaque. So what I normally do for this, as you can tell, it has a lot of pigment in it. I probably don't even need that much, but I'm just going to take a little bit of water and just mix that in a little bit, just because I don't want it to be, I don't want it to cover the color completely, but I'm just making like a very, very watery kind of version out of that. And I'm just using like parchment paper. You could use wax paper too, but what I want to do is I just kind of want to lightly go over that here and there and just kind of cover it. Basically the same way that I use the contrast paint, but just not as perfect. And this isn't too bad if you get the pooling. It's just water, so it actually comes out of the holes quite easy. And if you have too much spillage down there, you can always just wipe it off a little bit on a paper towel and just go back in. This stuff doesn't give me too much of a problem when it dries, so. Like I said, if you wanted it a little bit more green, which I probably will, go over it with just a little bit of regular paint to just make it slightly greener. That's actually another reason why I don't do my base quite yet, because all the layers of paint that I have going on here, eventually I'm going to cover that up. I normally put a little bit of sand and things in there, a little bit of rocks to give it a little bit of terrain texture. So we'll come back when that dries and I'll show you the next step. So before this dries, I kind of wanted to show you guys something neat though. I know it doesn't look like you put much green on there because you can still see a lot of the blue underneath and things like that, but check this out. You can really see that glow. And like I said, we're going to do a little bit more green and a little bit of yellow, and we're going to make that even more brighter, like really bright. So it looks good in regular light and UV light. All right, so the first layer of thin green is pretty much dry, but I was going to go back in a little bit with the green, and that's the Gamma Green, and just put a little extra here and there just to highlight some spots. So it's not too important where you're putting the majority of this green. That is also kind of preference, but I kind of just randomly place it here and there where I think it needs a little bit more green. I see a lot of those lighter spots where the contrast paint wasn't as thick. Just add a little bit of green highlight on that. And that just gives it a little bit more ability to stand out. So when you're happy with the amount of lime green or gamma green that you have on him, you can go ahead and do the next color, which is going to be quantum green, which is pretty neon as well. But before I go on doing that, I do want to get his little face in that green color, but I don't think I'm going to be doing his eye wrap. It's like little blindfold thing. I think I'm also going to do that a different color like his cloak. I'm sorry you guys can't really see that because my hand's in the way. But yeah, his little face is going to match his ghostly body. For the quantum green, I'm just going to use the same technique I did for the other colors. Just take a very little bit of that because we don't need a whole lot. We're just going to use it to highlight some parts. So just take a little bit here and there, like I said, just like the other techniques. And just slightly put a little bit here or there just to kind of brighten it up a little bit. I know it's a little hard to see because my hand's in the way. But just highlight a couple spots here and there with that. And there you got a couple little highlights here and there. And this is totally preference as well. You can do more highlights or you don't have to do them at all. But that's pretty much what I did for my entire green army. All right, we're finished with all of the green ghosty parts. And I think he looks pretty good so far. And he looks pretty good under UV light as well. Man, that glows so cool. Well, guys, thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and watch out for part 2. We're going to paint his cloak and his little metal weapons.